50 Cent Bulletproof is a weird concept for a game. The idea that a relatively unknown guy gets shot multiple times, then gets rich and famous, then decides to retell a fictionalized version of this story through the lens of a PlayStation 2 game blows my mind. And just a mere 5 years afterwards. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, I love it. The premise 100% was the reason I played this game. I have no interest in hip-hop, 50 Cent, G-Unit, or anything else going on here. I'm solely focused on the gameplay and how ridiculous it is. So, 17 years after its original release, how does it hold up? Is it any good? Should I add it to my retro collection? Well, let's find out. Bulletproof is a third-person cover shooter, releasing after Namco's Kill Switch and Sony's The Getaway, but somehow it feels older than both of them still. You're unable to take cover on most waist-high objects, you're unable to roll into cover, you can't aim around cover without exposing yourself to gunfire. The list really does go on. I really didn't even treat the game like a cover shooter and instead treated it more like SOCOM. Lots of hipfire strafing and precision shots from crouch. I struggled so much with the controls. They're not poorly laid out, but I did find aiming to be difficult. The game claims to have an aim assist option, but it didn't function how I expected. Honestly, I'm not sure if it did anything at all because I frequently overshot my targets if either of us were moving. Successfully hitting anything in 50 Cent Bulletproof is a miracle, as enemies run around frequently and randomly. You do have some close range attacks, but again, I felt that they were a bit underpowered. Taking a body shield is an option, though enemies will not hesitate to fire on you. 2 shots and your shield is gone, so I never used it. You can also perform an instant melee kill by pressing square if you have enough stamina. You start off with just a few of these counter kills, but you can unlock more with money earned through levels. I also felt like these were underpowered, because there are no iframes and you don't regenerate health or anything. Also, you don't get to choose which counter kills you get to see, the game randomly selects them for you. I unlocked all of them, but there were still so many I never got to see. Speaking of square, it being your primary action button is the single most glaring issue of this game in my opinion. Reloads, interacting with the environment, counter kills, all of these are done with square. If your gun isn't reloaded, you can't perform any actions. I cannot tell you how many times I ran at an enemy expecting to perform a counter kill just to have 50 reload while the enemy laid into me. You're just so limited in what you can do. You feel so weak all the time playing 50 Cent Bulletproof. The game already has an insane premise. Why not translate that to the gameplay? I was expecting Max Payne or The Punisher, but instead the dev team has crafted this weird, semi-tactical shooter. I wanted slow-mo, I wanted to be able to leap from cover and blast enemies, I wanted more advanced gore, maybe even a dismemberment system, but instead Bulletproof just feels stale and lifeless by comparison. Speaking of stale and lifeless, the levels are awful. They're all short and linear, lasting only a few minutes each. You'll fight across rooftops and sewers, junkyards, office buildings, etc. You drop in, shoot some guys, walk into an elevator, level complete. Levels are broken up by either load screens or a cinematic furthering the story. Sometimes, though, at the end of a set of levels, a boss will appear. Bosses are generally all the same. They'll strafe around and take shots at you when you're in their line of sight. I found the best strategy was to take a fast-firing weapon and just lay into them. You'll lock them in place and take a huge chunk of their health away. Alternatively, if I had a G-Unit member with me, I'd let them handle the boss. Just watch this clip here against one of the later bosses. The AI absolutely manhandles him. It has to be said that these guys are some of the best companions I've ever seen in a game. After the fight, you're returned to the hub world where you can spend your hard-earned cash for new counter kills, guns, ammo, healing items, and music. You can also explore 50's crib and watch vitamin water ads on his big screen TV, because that's exactly what I want to do when I buy a brand new game, watch advertisements. The subway acts as your level select. You're able to replay levels and get any collectibles you may have missed. All collectibles found pay out in cash. To my knowledge, there are no unlockables without using cheat codes or spending money. During some levels, you'll be asked by your friends to bring them a certain number of items. I typically ignored these because cash wasn't an issue. The game has no checkpoints, and trust me, you will die a lot. Many times I'd progress through a level just for enemies to spawn behind me and blast me in the back. I played on normal and still was getting clapped multiple times per level. I thought about quitting halfway through, but I stuck with it knowing the end was near. The game's difficulty was fairly consistent throughout the playthrough, and once I got to grips with its quirks, I didn't struggle too much anymore. anymore. The problem being though, once I got to grips with the game, it was over. 6 hours was pretty standard for action games back then, but everything in this felt so fast-paced. You unlock just about everything to further the gameplay on your first playthrough. Once you complete the game, there isn't much to do. You can replay the game on a higher difficulty, unlock songs and music videos, or tackle the arcade mode, which is sort of like the rampage mode in GTA. You're trying to kill a certain number of enemies to get the high score. As a kid, I would have definitely put some time into this, but as an adult, I don't think there's enough depth really to keep me coming back. All in all, 50 Cent Bulletproof is a bizarre, janky game. If you're a fan of 50 Cent, G-Unit, or hip-hop in general, you might find some fun in this. While I did enjoy the instrumental soundtrack and felt that it was the best part of the game, everything else bogs it down. With so many different options today to listen to music, I don't think adding this game to your collection is worth the hassle.
Shit, I impress myself sometimes.